Thanks for listening to the Replatform podcast, sponsored by Crownpeak and Elastic Path and hosted by me, James Gerd. We showcase e-com tech to help you decide what's relevant to your business and hopefully discover new solutions, bring you interviews with industry thought leaders and digital leaders across tech companies and leading retail brands. All we ask in return is you tell other people about the podcast and share or like our posts on LinkedIn. And if you're new to the show, give us that rating on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever else you might be listening. So thanks, and we hope you enjoy the next episode. It's going to be a cracking one. Our topic today is advice for DTC brands expanding into wholesale and B2B. Now, this is a huge area because lots of people talk about B2B being one of the fastest growth areas in e-commerce. But for people who aren't used to B2B selling, it brings with it operational and functional changes. So we've brought on somebody today who's got a lot of experience in this area. So warm welcome to Clare Cully. How are you doing, Clare?
Hi, James. Yeah, good to see you.
I'm looking forward to this, but before we start diving into this topic and draining you of all your knowledge, I know that currently you're looking at short-term consulting or digital e-commerce leadership or strategy projects or potentially mat leave cover. It'd be useful for people on the podcast listening. Share a bit of your background. Like what have you done? Where have you come from?
Yeah, sure. So previously I've been in-house with a couple of brands who are either already sustainable first or who are on a sustainable journey. And one of those was a really lovely wholesaler called Sass & Bell. Before that, I was in more of like a product management role at Tape. And I've also worked for Amazon and for Microsoft Bing. So yeah, kind of got some search expertise as well.
Amazing. Fantastic. So let's chat about the brands evolving into B2B, and we'll start with the key question. Why should brands that are currently like direct to consumer take B2B commerce seriously? Like when many are probably used to selling offline only, they have robust processes for that. Well, some have, others have very convoluted processes. They're used to account management offline and people doing phone orders, etc. Why should these brands be thinking about B2B?
Yeah, so I guess that's the $1 million question, isn't it? So these are really uncertain times, obviously, for retail and for the economy in general. So I think that there's actually four, you can bear with me, there's four parts to this. I think the main one is diversifying income streams for the business. So whenever like a business is looking to grow that's already doing e-com, they're like, what new channels do we add? Do we add this marketplace or do we expand into this country? But I think for B2B, it's more than just a channel. You're really launching in a whole new area of the business that could be really big. So I think that's part of it. So it's kind of adding a new stream that could really help to grow the business. The second one is higher AOVs, which again, as someone who's done e-com in-house, you might be getting like a £50 AOV for your D2C business. But if you start going wholesale, you'll probably have a minimum order threshold, right? So that might be, say, £200 or £300. So your AOVs are going to be at least £200 or £300, which is really exciting. Or, they might be as high as 5 or 6. So that's like 10x your D2C business. Obviously, you need to grow that customer base, but you can quickly see how it might start to really catch up with the scale of your D2C business. So yeah, that's the second one. And I think the third one is guaranteeing more repeat business as well, because depending on the type of products that you're selling, there might be, just gifts or sort of one-hit wonders. If someone buys from you once, or maybe they buy again, the following Christmas or the following Valentine's or something. But the whole point with B2B is that you're trying to create products that they'll put out on their shelves, whether it's digital or physical shelves, and that will sell through, and then they'll come and reorder from you. So hopefully there's some sort of business continuity there, that those customers should keep coming back because they're ordering the right stuff from you and it's selling well for their business. And then I think the final one, the fourth one, is the increased brand awareness as well. So you can reach a certain number of people through your own channels and through your own marketing, or maybe you're doing more like top of funnel stuff, you're doing PR and social, maybe you're doing performance marketing. But once you start to get, again, onto other people's shelves and benefit from their marketing, you can see how the brand can really start to amplify. So that might not even be something that people have, in their initial plans. But I think that's a really good benefit too.
Yeah, I really like the way you've broken into those four areas. The last one for me is often underestimated, and I've seen people use that really smartly when they've grown into like overseas territories, because the cost of going into another market, if you're trying to do that physically and through your own presence, can be quite high. But if you have strategic partners where you can sell through their existing channels. So yeah, really, really nice point. Something that I've noticed, because I haven't always worked with B2B. A lot of work I've done in the past is B2C, but increasingly over the last 5 years, there's a lot of B2B projects that I've worked on. And what I've noticed is people seem to think B2B buyers are older and want to do things in a very traditional way, when actually that's not true. The profile of the B2B buyer has changed quite significantly, and a lot of them are younger, grown up digital first, are expecting B2C online customer experiences. What do you think that change in, I guess, the demographic of B2B buyers, what impact has that had in terms of what people expect from the businesses they're working with?
Yeah, sure. I think it's what's affected everyone regardless of age is the pandemic, right? So people have now got used to working remotely, or they've got used to working in a hybrid way, and that sort of forced lots of different functions online that before it might have been, like a phone call, or I guess back in the day they were ordering from catalogs, right? And maybe faxing stuff in. So yeah, like you said, a lot of that's really shifted. I think the younger B2B buyer, like the more digital native person, is just wants more self-service. They kind of want to be able to do things on their terms at their convenience. And we've certainly seen that, with other brands I've worked with, where they want access to like the asset banks, for example. So, they want to be able to just bulk download product images for items that they've ordered from you, or bulk download product data. They just want it to be kind of self-service and simple. Obviously, they'll get in touch if they need to, but yeah, ideally, they just want things to work and to be able to get on with it on their own terms. And I think there's a bit of a shift away from email as well for the younger generation. So they will use it, but it's not necessarily their primary channel. Like at work, they might be on Slack or on kind of WhatsApp groups with their colleagues, or certainly if they're in a younger team. So, obviously, they don't use email if they need to, but I think being able to just log on and get stuff done is what's right for that group.
Crown Peak, enabling organisations to build meaningful digital experiences for everyone, everywhere. Engage your customers with our content management system, reach your entire audience with our digital accessibility and quality tools, and grow your brand with our product discovery solution. Find out more at crownpeak.com.
Yeah, definitely. And traditionally, when people have turned on B2B selling online for their customers, it's often just a very basic portal. So it's like a functional order form and checkout, but that is it. It has limited UX design and little wider e-com functionality. And I know that a full My Account profile just doesn't exist. To what extent are you now seeing those B2B buyers demanding those B2C like e-com features? And and how much do you need to replicate that ease of online shopper journeys versus just giving them the ability to order online?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a no-brainer. Like in this day and age, I think if you're going to create any type of website, then it doesn't have to be super complex, but it needs to look good. It needs to represent your brand, because it is still, it's still an important part of your business, and it needs to be intuitive. Maybe don't pack in all the features straight away if that's, if you've not kind of got the capacity to do that. But at least, some of the sites I see, they're so horrific. They're just very, almost like someone's stuck a catalogue online. Yeah, that maybe they really aren't nice to use. I think one thing that that's a trick that's often missed as well is that the quality of the photography does need to be good. So at the end of the day, you're selling products, right? Also, well, for the sake of this conversation that we're having, so you really need to do them justice and have large images or images that can be zoomed in on, and all sorts of things that people are used to having on D2C sites. They're going to want to look at the detail of the product if they haven't bought it before, and they're not familiar with the brand necessarily. And I think the mobile piece is really important as well. So again, I keep seeing these sort of older clunky sites that aren't mobile optimized still, and they're certainly not mobile first. And yeah, again, coming back to the working from home thing, like people, maybe they should be doing all of their work on their work laptop, but they're not. They're going to want to do bits on their phone. Maybe they're out walking the dog or on the bus somewhere, and they're like, "Oh, I'm going to top up that order." So I think the mobile piece is really important, and just putting like really clear USPs on there as well. So what does set you apart? Yeah, maybe you have got quite a low minimum order compared to some other B2B brands. Maybe you've got really good supply chain now, and you've been working on like your own ethics or your own sustainability policies, like get that all up there on the side that actually sell. Yeah, I think the art is such an ironic thing that they're not really selling themselves on some of these sites.
Yeah, I agree. The point about image quality is so important, because I've seen that before where people have just literally dumped manufacturers' images into a website and they're grainy, they don't show the good quality. And if you've got a professional B2B buyer whose job it is to source high quality product for their own business, and they're looking across 3 or 4 suppliers and they see yours looking like utter crap and another supplier's looking pixel perfect and zoomed and nice, and going, well, that's going to influence their purchase decision just as much as availability and price because of the quality message it sends.
Yeah, and I guess some of those images might have come from ERP or something. Again, it might be because they've got other legacy systems that are pushing to the website. But yeah, again, I think you just need to sort out if you're gonna compete in this space. Then yeah, it's definitely a priority.
Yeah, and linked to that, and I've had a lot of conversations with businesses who are trying to sell B2B about, and it's the same principle as B2C, right? It's not just we got one image, it's okay, great, but how are the images telling the story of the product? Because people can't pick it up and use it online. So how many images do you need as a minimum to tell the story? Do you need a video because the product is technical or advanced or a considered purchase?
Yeah.
So yeah, it does open up that thinking that retail B2C has done better over the last 3 to 5 years. But let's dive into some more B2B specific functionality, because this is a bit I always find interesting. I know when we worked here on the SaaS and Bell, we spent a lot of time looking at functional needs as well as those user journey bits. So let's help people who might be working in a D2C business. What do they need to research and understand in this area in the context of key B2B features? And let's talk about like business account structures and user roles and permissions, which obviously doesn't exist in pretty much all B2C e-com.
Yeah, well, I mean, so this was a shock to me when I first started working with B2B brands as well. So normally in e-commerce, your unique identifier is the user's email address, right? So that's what they log in with, and that's how the database kind of tracks it through and kind of through to fulfillment as well. But that has to shift once you're working in a business context, because you might have multiple users from the same business who need to log in. Even in a small company, you might have the founder or the CEO, and then someone in a buying function, and maybe someone from finance needs to go in as well and just prove things, or at least see what's going on. Because again, people might be spending thousands of pounds, right? That's the exciting thing once you start to shift to B2B. So yeah, I think you need to have a company structure and like a company kind of ID above, and then users nested underneath. And ideally those users would have different permission levels as well. And that's kind of to protect the more junior people. So it might be that a junior buyer doesn't want to accidentally push through an order for like 5K, which which is perfectly reasonable. So like you said, that's definitely a consideration that you wouldn't think of if you'd just been working D2C previously.
Yeah, I came across a company I work with at the moment in the US, and they've got quite a complex structure, like dental services organisations, which might have a super parent, a parent, and a child, because they're like private equity owned, multiple groups and multiple dental practices within each group. And within those layers, you've got all the different permissions, including people who can't ever buy, but they can create carts.
Yeah.
People can, as you just said, people will shop up to a specific threshold. Maybe they got $200 budget. You've got others who can spend up to any level, but they can't approve, and the orders have to be approved by a suit. And it's amazing when, depending on what the business model is, how much effort needs to go in to model those user permissions so you get people set up correctly. Yeah. And if you do that wrong, it creates chaos. You're right. Yeah. Spending the time and effort to do that is so important. Let's go to the next one. Now, this is an area that I think is really interesting, is the online self-service via My Account and other tools. Like, what should a B2B site give the online shoppers so that they can self-serve effectively?
Again, I think this could sort of catch people out, because for D2C, ideally you'd have really loyal customers who come back again and again and who want to browse their order history. But they're less likely to be buying the same product, firstly, because they've got it. Whereas B2B, completely the other way around. Like, you're hoping they will reorder the same product. And also, in D2C, some people just check out as a guest because they're not planning to come back, or or they just don't really want to commit. But with B2B, they have to be fully registered. Like we were saying, they have to have probably multiple users, like you need to have their VAT number, their e-ordering, like all this kind of extra information. And they do expect that account area, I think, to be more self-serve and more somewhere where, different people from the business might log in and check status. So you definitely want a clear order history in there with status about whether it's been shipped or partially shipped. Because that's another fun thing. You might be fulfilling part of an order because it's a large order, right? So something might not have turned up, or part of it might be pre-order. So you need to deal with split shipments and make it clear what has shipped and what hasn't. I think the functionality to be able to clone orders and sort of tweak them and then reorder. Depending on your product catalog, that it might be that you sell lots of small things. Maybe it's like bamboo toothbrushes and sort of bathroom accessories or something. So people might be ordering large quantities of lots of like smaller value items. So they're not going to want to sit there and type an order out again and again if they don't have to. So I think easy reordering. And then, so looking at payments as well, any outstanding invoices. I think there's lots to think about for what's required in the account area. And that will vary from business to business. But those are some of the basic ones.
Elastic Path is on a mission to break through the barriers that prevent commerce leaders from delivering extraordinary shopping experiences. Both business and tech teams are able to innovate on their own terms, fully embrace composability, and in turn, never compromise on what's possible. Learn more at www.elasticpath.com.
Yeah, that's a really nice one, the reordering. And the one of the ones that I find interesting is how people handle where somebody is placing an order, they have permission to, but the account credit is used up because somebody hasn't paid the last invoice. Do you accept the order but put it in pending and just communicate, or do you not allow them to submit the order online? And that seems to cause this. What's your experience? What have you seen in terms of a sensible way to handle that?
We'll talk a bit about sort of teams later, but I think you do need sort of sales ops or account managers who is particularly assigned to like larger accounts who are on top of this stuff. So they might need to get some sort of report or to be pinged if there's accounts which are at risk in that sense, and then to work with finance and agree the way forward. If they're a really good customer and you value their business and it's just gone a bit wrong and they're a bit late, then you take that judgment call, right, and you push it through. But if they're a repeat offender and you've been getting where someone's been coming down on you for a while from the finance team that they're not comfortable with these guys, then I think that's a different story. So and this is one of the things, there's so much nuance in B2B with like each customer is different because each business is different. So that's just something to be aware of as well. Like you'll have to keep making these judgment calls and making these decisions, and they're a tougher crowd, right? Because they don't have consumer rights. It's a B2B relationship, so you need to negotiate and maintain a healthy relationship with them.
Yeah, that's a really nice point actually about having a varied policy on it rather than one size fits all. Because if you have a really important VIP customer who you just suddenly stop ordering because somebody somewhere forgot to pay an invoice, which happens, people make mistakes, you end up damaging the relationship. But this is really important though for the people listening who are considering this and haven't done it before, is having these conversations with vendors about how you handle variated policy on this and how you can set different controls so you don't block people, and even how you can do things like accepting orders so you don't create a UX issue on the website but put them into a holding queue and generate those notifications to get the salespeople to then follow up and massage that client into paying. That leads me on to requests for quotes, quotation management. And I mean, I know it's one of the areas we looked at when we looked at the BigCommerce platform, and we're going to talk about BigCommerce and Shopify a bit later around B2B. For some businesses, quotations are huge. I'd worked with a home loans company where about 60% of all their sales went through quotation management. What's your take on the importance and what you need to do quotations effectively for B2B?
And I think it depends a lot on the types of products, but really generically, like how complex they are and how much advice you would need. Yeah, again, like a salesperson or like a new business person. But generally, I think they're really useful for new customers. So if you're in like a business development role and you're trying to illustrate what it might look like to work together and what their first order might look like, then you're not forcing them to sign up and potentially go through a bit of a process there and build their own basket. You're doing all that work for them and being like, oh, look, this is how easy this is. So yeah, I think that it's sort of reducing friction and building the relationship at least to start with. And then I think, if it's more complex products, like you said, if it's some sort of DIY homewares type stuff and there's nuance around what's actually appropriate for their needs, then it's more of a, I want to say personal shopping, but it's more of a collaborative shopping thing anyway, maybe, and they need more assistance regardless, just because of the types of products. So, and I think it can also help illustrate like MOQs if they're not used to your minimum order quantities per SKU, or again, like if your thresholds are quite low for minimum order, it can just sort of illustrate that quite nicely as well. So, your first order could be as low as £300, and then obviously you can give them like an introductory discount if that's something that you need to do to win the business.
Nice. And let's talk about payment methods. So, people are used to DTC. It's predominantly card or mobile wallet, sometimes depending on the product and the audience, buy now, pay later. What do you see as the key pure B2B payment methods that people should be taking seriously and enabling?
Yeah, well, I think that's the biggest shift is payment terms, right? So, pay by invoice. I think brands who've just been working D2C won't be used to this. Like, obviously, they will, like the finance team will be used to it for other reasons, but for a website perspective, they won't be used to it. So you want to get some policy in around that and kind of understand when you first start working with someone, do you immediately let them have terms? Do you force them to pay by card first? Or, do you invoice them this, like they need to pay immediately? Larger accounts might expect 60 or 90 days, which could really affect your cash flow. So, there's lots of considerations there, but I think that's one of the main expectations. Card for sure, different credit cards. And obviously, if you're expanding internationally, you need to look at what sort of cards buyers are likely to have, because that might be different. They'll be on business credit cards, so that might be different to the cards that you're used to accepting D2C. I think PayPal's quite an interesting one to explore, because if they're online and they're receiving money from their orders into PayPal are also doing all sorts like they're lending credit now as well, so for small businesses to help them grow. So it's definitely worth considering whether PayPal's an option for B2B, which I think a lot of people won't have considered. And there's also buy now, pay later players as well, which are B2B specific, which is fairly new. So I think it depends if you want to work with small brands. So say you're selling, like candles or something, you might be working with like small garden centres or independent gift shops. So buy now, pay later might be a way of getting those smaller brands on, so those smaller retailers on board as well.
Have you seen buy now, pay later growing quickly then in B2B space? Because the B2B customers I've worked with haven't offered it. It's mainly been like credit, bank transfer, etc. So how important are you seeing that now, or is it really product specific, like you said?
It's more just seeing more vendors. So I think it's just one to consider.
Really?
I don't think it was a thing before. So if you are working with smaller retailers and you think that you're missing out on a slice of the pie, I think it's almost like a good acquisition tactic. It's all about reducing friction and saying how easy you are to work with, and how, like we were saying before, you're not kind of this big rigid corporate behemoth. So I think it's kind of a nice to have, and like maybe a useful thing for acquisition or to start conversations. I wouldn't say it's essential for launch though, for MVP. It's more just one to explore.
Yeah, that makes sense. And now let's talk about the operational side, because fulfilling wholesale and B2B orders, when you talk about like much larger order volumes, sometimes people are buying like pallet loads rather than small orders. Mm-hmm. It brings considerations that a DC retailer won't be used to. What impact have you seen B2B have on this side of the business? What could catch a D2C brand out?
Yeah, so I don't want to scare anyone, but quite a lot. So I guess if we're assuming that you're not doing 3PL, if you're doing 3PL, you need to have a serious conversation with your provider about whether they can handle this. But if you've got your own FC, again, every business is different. So I think just be prepared. Prepare that sales or that account management team to go and talk to the FC team or, the head of logistics and have some frank conversations, because sometimes it's just not going to work. So you might have to turn down business or disappoint customers. But yeah, I think some of the really obvious ones are if you're selling to retailers who have like multiple stores or multiple branches, you might need to be shipping, one order to different locations, or they might want to just clone the order and they'll be like, oh, I'll have 10 times that. So I send it to all of these different locations. So that's something that you might not have done with DTC previously. What we were saying before about split orders. So some orders might be that it's got some pre-order items in and some items which are readily available, or the status might change. So they might place the order, but then someone steals a load of the stock and it goes to one of your own stores, for example. So I think there's a piece about pre-orders and splitting orders which are mixed, and ring fencing as well. So you might be kind of fighting with your own stores or your own website for stock, which won't have happened before. You need to get some processing around that. People might ask, so your B2B customers might ask for timed or delayed shipments. So especially if there's, like around seasonality. So say you're selling advent calendars or something, they might be happy to order them in March, but they don't want to receive them in March. They want to receive them in September or October, perhaps. And again, you need to say whether you're willing to do that and whether you're willing to lose business if you're not able to do that. Obviously, I think particularly if there's seasonality in what you're doing, which obviously there is for a lot of us because it's Q4, be wary of that. QC could be really different because if you're used to your pickers just, picking something, having a look at it, checking it's not broken and then sending it out, that totally changes if you're working with inner and outer cartons. Are they going to open every outer carton and check some inners to make sure that the stock's okay before that big box goes out? So it's just a process that you need to get in place with the logistics team and decide what's right for your business. Obviously, if you're selling like softer items, it's not such a big deal, but anything that's fragile and breakable. And then quite a scary one if you start working with key accounts, like really big guys. So maybe, I haven't done this much, but maybe like the supermarkets or Amazon, and they're notorious for this. They might have really strict rules around when they will receive your delivery, and you might have a very strict slot and labelling conditions for the boxes or for the pallets. And if you mess those up, they're going to fine you. So then you might get the order cancelled and you'll get fined. That's quite a nasty one that can catch people out. So just be very aware once you're working with some of the bigger guys of what their processes are, and what their requirements are. And I think the final one is just sort of storage. So you might have your FC at, the perfect temperature. Again, say you're sending like candles or chocolate advent calendars or something. Your FC might be set up for that. And then once it gets to your stores, if you've got physical stores, how it needs to be kept. But now you're dealing with another stage of dispatch and storage as well. So your customers need to be aware of any climate control issues. If it's going to sit in their FC for months, then you don't want them to get caught out, because again, they might not order from you again if they a load of melted candles and you didn't tell them that stuff needed to be kept in a certain way.
Yeah, that's a great one actually. I hadn't thought about that one, but the one about reserving. Yeah, the one about reserving stock resonates. I've had that with a few businesses where some have wanted to do it from a VIP point of view, so that they ring fence stock allocation to their priority customers. And then there's obviously other people who are trying to sell stock to all their customers who obviously want the sale and the commission. And if the process, whatever system, not mainly an ERP, is not set up to handle it correctly, it trips people up, because manually it's a nightmare. And that timing one as well. I work with a business where they've got a couple of big customers who turn around and say, right, you've got to deliver on a Thursday morning, and that's the slot they're given. Therefore, it doesn't matter when the orders come through; they have to be held in the queue to be picked and packed and dispatched at the right times.
Yeah,
you're right. B2B is, if only one size fits all, would make life a lot easier. What's your take on the commercial model? Let's go commercials now, because pricing and margins can vary significantly, because you've got account-based pricing, you've got tiered discounting, etc. What is different, and what do people need to be aware of, and how can it impact strategy?
Yeah, well, I think let's start with margin, because when you're coming up with your go-to-market strategy, your B2B margins will be much tighter because obviously you need to factor in the markup that the retailer then needs to make to try and achieve. I mean, it doesn't necessarily sell it at your RRP, but it still needs to be sold at a sensible list price. So you're either going to need to increase your RRPs or reduce your costs. And you may need to do a mix of both. So you'll need to look at economies of scale, working with your suppliers. So hopefully you'll now be placing much larger orders with your suppliers, and they can pass on some savings because of that. And sort of similarly larger MOQs. So if you're, you might be able to get better prices per unit from them because it's easier to ship and all that kind of stuff. So there's definitely needs to be a piece of analysis done around that and where that, like how you're going to sort out those tighter margins for B2B. And then discounting has got two sides to it as well. So if you're going to run sales or promotions on your D2C site, you now need to understand how that might affect your new B2B customer. So particularly if they're selling online, someone can quickly check your site as the brand and be like, oh, great, you're running like a massive summer sale. But if they weren't ready to discount that stock, particularly if they bought it more new from you, then you're ending up you're affecting your B2B business suddenly, even though you might be doing the right thing for your D2C business. So I think you just need to put in think through those scenarios and put in some rules and some guidelines around that. And that might sit with marketing teams or e-com teams or finance. It might be that everyone needs to get involved, but so in some sort of process around that and some strategy and how it will change once you launch B2B. And then on the discounting for the B2B customers, I mean, they're going to negotiate, right? Because they're not consumers in this context. So, they like they're business people. So they're likely to negotiate. So again, I think you need to have some best practice or get some rules agreed for your business development team, because they're going to be hungry to bring on new customers, but you don't want them to discount excessively. So I think get some guidance in place for that. So do you have introductory discounts that they're allowed to give to kind of get someone over the finish line, like we said, when they do those early quotations? Would larger accounts always get an account level discount just because you know that they're going to spend a lot with you? And again, hopefully you're sort of saving somewhere, on economies of scale. Do you also want to discount if they're buying in volume? So like break pricing. So if they order an outer carton, they automatically get a discount. And that's something you could show on the front end of the website. So there's a mixture as well between like what the website needs to be able to do and the promotions engine on the platform, and then what's going to be more, behind the scenes, what the sales team or the account management team are allowed to do. It's not a simple answer again.
No, but this is good. The point of this episode was to help people realise that all the things they need to think about and to start planning, because it isn't a simple answer. Unless you have such a simple B2B business where you've got 2 or 3 very simple, small clients, but as you grow, it gets more complicated. And we want that. This is what I love about this podcast, is that transparency to help people understand what they need to plan for so they've got the time to do it, rather than panic at the end and to make a decision. So the next...
And I think be a bit careful about your industry as well. Sorry, I was going to say, be a bit careful about your industry as well, because some of the buyers might be quite scummy. Some of them might not at all, and they might stay really anonymous. But if you do start discounting for someone or do one thing for someone, just be aware of who they're mates with.
Yes, that is a very good point. People talk regardless of what NDAs and everything else have been signed. So let's go on to platform. I know you've worked with different platforms. We worked on a project where we looked at Ecommerce, and I've got a particular soft spot for Ecommerce in the B2B space because I think it's done a lot of very smart stuff, having launched the B2B edition. When you did that evaluation of Ecommerce, and since then, what impressed you about Ecommerce for B2B, and what's your take on where they're focused?
I just thought it was really obvious that they wanted to be in that space and that they were really focusing on B2B, which at the time, obviously, you could achieve that stuff with some of the larger platforms, but for SMEs, it seemed like they were really trying to get ahead in that space and obviously get ahead of Shopify, because they were already working with Bumble B2B, and then they actually acquired them about 18 months ago. And then now they've sort of started to integrate it more, and it's turned into a B2B edition. And then they've continued to iterate on that with a release, which I think was in July this year. So now that's compatible with multi-storefront functionality. It's a mouthful. So yeah, you could have your DTC and your B2B store managed from like the same back office in BigCommerce, which I know was something that that they were kind of really keen to get launched. And now they've also launched a beta program for headless B2B edition as well. So it just shows that they're doing, some quite chunky stuff and like doing, maybe a couple of releases a year, which is great. I don't know if that's like your assessment of them as well.
Yeah, the multi-storefront was the big challenge that previously it wasn't compatible with, but that was inevitable after they bought out Bundle B2B and tried to merge into the platform. But yeah, I think that's a game changer for a lot of merchants because it simplifies operationally how you manage it. I just think that the core function, because they bought Quote Ninja, I can't remember the exact name of it, which is the quoting engine. So the end-to-end quotation management flow, I really like. It's not clunky, it's smooth, and it works for bit and salespeople as well as it does for customers. So yeah, I think you're right. I think your assessment's pretty spot on actually, and they've just doubled down on it. I mean, the latest partner event B2B is a fundamental to that. So that's only going to get better. But you mentioned Shopify just said, and actually interesting because when we did that analysis, Shopify was quite far behind, but it's now an area they've focused on and they've caught up. They've beefed up. What was Wholesale is definitely stronger. They've got improvements around like the price list, customer price and account pricing. Where do you now see Shopify sitting in the B2B space? Do you see it as being suitable for a particular type of business? Because in my head, Shopify still, although it's going to change, is more for simple wholesale and less for complex B2B. But who knows? I'm intrigued to get your take on it.
Yeah, I would agree. So I think they're obviously catching up, right? They can move quite swiftly, and obviously they've got much bigger dev teams. So yeah, they're obviously catching up, which is great. It's good to have healthy competition. I think if a brand's already on Shopify Plus, they should definitely consider staying, right, and just trying to make the most of the B2B features. I mean, you and Paul talk about this a lot on the podcast. Like, you don't want to do a migration unless it's really necessary. So, I think if you're already on Shopify Plus and that's your platform, then definitely consider whether you can get away with their slightly smaller set of features. I think also if you've got like if you want to have a simple pricing strategy, so for example, if it's just like 20 or 30% off RRP and that's your trade pricing, then that could work. I recently got targeted on Instagram by Plank Hardware. I don't know if you've heard of them, but they make like really nice sort of colourful, like contemporary shaped like door handles and kind of stuff that you could upcycle furniture with. Good job. Like, they've totally hooked me in. I looked, and they're a good example because they sell to trade, but as in like interior designers or builders. So those guys aren't going to then try and resell online. They're just going to pass on some discount to their customers, right? So I think for that sort of context, it could be fine. Like, I don't think you necessarily need a different platform. And if you've just got like a smaller catalog or like simple products, one of the things that I do like about BigCommerce is that you can masquerade as the customer and help to build up that basket and build up that order, which I don't think Shopify offers yet. So, but yeah, again, if you've got a really small catalog, all the products don't need that much explanation, then maybe self-serve is absolutely fine. So that wouldn't be a deal breaker. And I think the final thing is just the payment setup. So you just want to do some analysis about, like I said, you're hopefully going to see much larger orders going through on card. So from is that still going to work for the business? Like, you need to do some analysis about the transaction fees for different card types, and just make sure that that's still going to work, and you're not going to get caught out with Shopify. They don't have as much flexibility as other platforms when it comes to paid.
Yeah, that was a nice point actually. The masquerading one, I did like that as well, because it's something a lot of platforms struggle with. Everyone seems to have draft orders, but that is just create an order, send it to them, rather than I can take it over, I can help you complete it. Now let's, which is much nicer. So my final question for you is around change management internally. So we've talked about the platform, the functionality, the customer facing bit. Now let's help businesses who are considering this think about what impact it might have internally. If you're moving from purely DTC, and now you're running B2B commerce. What do people need to think about resource-wise, process-wise?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it does touch pretty much every area of the business. So again, I don't want to scare people, but it needs some serious thought. And I think there's also the difference between, we're going to launch it and what's necessary for launch, and then what you might mature to need if it starts to go well and you see like a high volume of wholesale orders. But I think you do definitely need to invest in some sort of, sales team, like new business team, whatever you want to call them. And they need to be very integrated with marketing. So there's some really good advice about B2B marketing on LinkedIn, and a lot of people are not getting it right who are in B2B already. So you could really get ahead by planning how those teams are going to work together, and what your go-to-market strategy is. So I think, sales and marketing will be really effective. For marketing, it might feel like a huge shift as well. So get them involved very early on, because they should be looking at buyer personas, and you can still do paid media for B2B. You just need to target it really tightly, and it can actually have really huge ROI if you get the targeting right. You should look at, LinkedIn ads, for example, even though I think they're still quite high pay-per-click, because they're so effective. They should be doing, content marketing and sort of thought leadership as well on LinkedIn. And you might need a totally separate trading and campaign calendar. So it's going to affect marketing. You need more salespeople, customer service. They would need training, obviously, on like the new features and being able to, like we said, look at the permission sets and all that kind of stuff. But I do think you also need, more of a sales ops team. Like, don't just dump everything on customer services when each B2B customer might have really nuanced needs. So I think you want to work through that kind of stuff as well with them. And then, obviously for e-coms, it's going to be really big because you're kind of you might be launching a totally separate website on a separate domain, or even if it's quite integrated with your existing site, there's going to be some big changes around UX, SEO. For reporting, again, you might want to totally split out your reporting because it's a very different type of customer, and you might merchandise the site quite differently as well. And thinking about how the B2B buyer wants to shop to then stock their shelves rather than just like the product at home or more in context. It might even be that you want to look at ideas for how to merchandise and store. And then product development as well. So the list is really long. Product development needs to think about lead times. So again, if it's a seasonal product, it might be that up until now, you've got your samples ready at this time, and then marketing shot it and then started to launch it. But if you're going to sell to B2B, you might need to bring those forward by 3 or 6 months at least, so that those teams can plan for their launches. So product development need to be involved early on as well, because you might be expecting them to work a lot further ahead. And of course, finance always needs to be involved. They're going to have an increased workload if they're now managing these invoice payments and kind of like trying to chase different people to what they used to. It's much simpler on D2C where payment just goes through immediately, and if it doesn't go through, they don't get them. So finance for sure, get them involved nice and early on. And they might be, they should be your business partners anyway, right? So it's not something you would do in isolation without finance, and potentially legal as well. So you're going to need different T's and C's. And like I said, a business customer, it's not the same as a consumer. They could be a lot tougher, or you might just never get paid for stuff. So you need to kind of work out when you're getting involved, or you might end up with IT challenges, all sorts of things. So definitely keep finance and legal looped in as well.
Excellent. That's really good. Yeah, it's a great point about policy and legal and coverage, because as much as you want policy to be about adding value and supporting customers, you've also got to protect yourself legally so you don't get up in any nasty situations. So that's been brilliant. I've really enjoyed it. I knew it'd be a great episode with you, but also some really good practical advice. So as I said at the start, I know you're open to consulting work at the moment around like digital e-commerce leadership strategy, or even like map cover stuff. If anyone wants to reach out to talk about this or talk to you about a potential project, how do they get in touch?
Just add me on LinkedIn. I love LinkedIn. So you can share my details, right?
I was about to say, after you've just plugged LinkedIn's advertising, they should give you a commission now for anyone who signs up to it. But that's cool. I really, really enjoyed it. And I'm sure the listeners will have got loads of useful advice from that. And everyone who's listening, thanks as always. Keep an ear open for next week's episode, and do let us know of any topics you'd like us to cover. And if it's your first time listening, don't forget to give us that rating wherever you're listening or watching. Thanks, everybody. For more information on this topic, head over to replatform.fm for our audio podcasts. To discuss a project, or if you'd like to chat about any of the topics covered in this episode in more detail, please reach out to myself, James Gerd, or my co-host Paul Rogers via LinkedIn and Twitter. Thanks again for listening, and keep your ears peeled for the next episode.